This morning, we're going to start a new series called Beyond Blessed. Beyond Blessed. Now, if you're blessed, is anyone in here blessed? Do we have any blessed people in here? How do you get beyond blessed? I mean, if you're blessed by God, isn't that like, I'm blessed, I'm good? Well, let me help give you a little illustration to help you understand this. If you've got grandkids, you make grandparents out there? Anybody grandparents? All right, so if you've got like one grandkid, you're blessed. If you're like Brian, who just had like 2 more grandkids, what do you got? Like 7 grandkids. He is beyond blessed, all right? So what you understand that? There's a special blessing that goes with that. And so the idea here is that God so blesses us, not necessarily material gain, but he gives us a blessing so we can bless others. And the principle here is this, and this is the first little blank in your notes. We get to give. We do not give to get. It's a privilege for us to be able to give. We get to. Don't think of it as a burden. And so have this idea in your mind. We get to. It's a blessing. Last year, we went through a few video series and tied in with Pastor Robert Morris. How many remember that? And I had a lot of feedback. You guys said you enjoyed it. So this year, I decided to take it up a notch. I'm tag teaming with Pastor Robert Morris. I'm living the dream right now, okay? Of course, he has no idea we're tag teaming. All right, but so I'm going to start the message, and then Pastor Robert Morris will end it, and we'll have a joy together. And so I want to make sure that the idea here that we all understand is we want to be a blessing to others. Yes? When God blesses us, the goal is not, well, God bless me and I'll hold it all in. The goal is, God blesses me so that what? I can give and bless others, right? In his book, he tells his testimony and his story. He wrote a book, and it was called The Blessed Life. I encourage you, if you haven't read that one, read it. And this new book he came out with is Beyond Blessing. But he tells a story about the book that 90% of all books sell less than 5,000 copies. 95% of all books sell less than 10,000 copies. So only 5% of books sell actually more than 10,000 copies. And as he was writing his book, he came to this spot where God had asked him, listen, this is your first book. And obviously, Pastor Morris talks about a tithe, talks about giving to the Lord. And so he believed that God told him, give the book away. Give it. So he gave the rights away, gave it to the church. His first book, gave it to the church and said, they have the rights. So he gave that. His book, The Blessed Life, sold 250,000 copies. It's now in 30 to 40 languages, sold millions of copies. 17 years later, it's an international bestseller. And he will tell you it's not because he wrote the book. He believes it's because he honored God and gave it away. That this is God's word. I want to give it as a tithe and honor the church. It brings in about $500,000 to the church every year. Now that's a blessing. I mean, it would be a blessing. How many would like, $500,000 a year? That'd be something, right? You could do a lot with that, right? But his thought was, it's not about getting. It's about giving. So let's look at component number 1, because we sometimes get this a little confused. Component number 1 is giving. That is an important compartment about being a blessing. And it's I'm giving, and then you have this question, well, Pastor Jason, what about I'm giving but I'm still in debt? Well, we started a class called Financial Peace University. The goal of the class is to help you get out of debt. But if you're still in debt and you're giving, it's because you're not working on component number 2. We'll get to that in just a second. Giving is only one part of being blessed. Giving is only one part of being blessed. Yes, you want to give. That is an important component. You need to do that. But it's not just, that's not the only part. If you brush how many of you parents, you have teenagers or you've raised teenagers. Do you have this struggle in your house? Brush your teeth. Brush your teeth. Brush your teeth. Put on deodorant. Brush your teeth. Comb your hair. Put on deodorant. The struggle is real. Am I right? It's like, hey, there's a toothbrush, toothpaste, you put, and you go like this, Deodorant helps you. Take a shower. Take a shower. Take a shower. Take a shower. Have you taken a shower? Take a shower. Right? Some of you who have teenagers understand the struggle that you go through, right? Pre-teenager. And so there's this idea that the same principle is true with giving. If you're giving and you just comb your hair, you haven't fixed your hair. Sometimes, ladies, you've got to add the gel or the mousse or the hairspray, and you've got to prep it right? There's more to. Yes, you can comb it, but it doesn't look as good as it can, right? Okay? Now, that's why the guys do the short hair. You don't have to comb anything. I'm good to go, right? But there's this idea that you can't, in giving, it's not just one part. One part is important, but if you miss the other part, then you're lacking. There's a huge second component, and that's what we're going to talk about in this series and today, and it's this, and the idea is stewardship. It's not just giving, it's also stewardship. Now, stewardship is not a bad word. Sometimes we think it's a bad word. Some people are, they get all uptight about it, but stewardship is a good word. Matter of fact, anybody know where the word comes from? Old England. Okay? Old England. And you had a steward of the castle. How many know what a steward of the castle is? The steward of the castle would be the person who owns the castle would say, hey, take care of the castle. It was the steward's job to take care of everything in the castle. They took care of the presentation of the castle. They took care of how the castle looked. They took care of the cleaning, the management, everything about the castle. That was the steward's job. God has entrusted us to be what? Stewards. Now, please understand, it's not just about money. Yes, money is a part of what we're stewards of, but it's more than that. You are a steward of your time. How many of you wish you had a little bit more time in your life? I could use some more time to get some things done, right? You are a steward of your time. You are a steward of your relationships. You are a steward of how you treat other people. You are a steward of how you interact with one another. We just talked about some of the basics and the importance of knowing. You are a steward of your walk with Christ and how you share the gospel. You've been entrusted stewardship on sharing your faith. You are a steward of many things. Your talents. What are you good at? Some are like, well, I'm not good at anything. Yes, you are. God has given you a talent and ability. You are a steward of that talent. Stewardship has to do with every area of your life. Stewardship is not just money. It's every area of your life. You are a steward. So, how does this stewardship thing look? How do I do this? Well, here's the point number one. It takes two legs. It takes two legs. If you go back and if you remember Pastor Morris's book, The Blessed Life, it is not called the Blessed Wallet or the Blessed Checking Account or the Blessed Savings Account or the Blessed Money Market Account. Okay? It's the blessed life. The idea is that it's not just about money. There's more to it than money. Life walks on two legs. Okay? If you're going to get somewhere, you have to move one leg, then the other, then the other. How many of you have ever hurt one leg and so you have one leg to hobble around on? It's not easy, is it? Matter of fact, usually what happens is you end up doing one of two things. You get crutches or you get a wheelchair, right? Because I can't get around on just one leg. I need two. And so giving is one of those legs. Stewardship is another. If you're going to get somewhere, if you're going to go somewhere, it takes two legs. If you're going to win with finances, if you're going to have a blessed life, if you're going to win with the talents and gifts that God's given to you, you need to give. So you give your talents, you give your energy, you give your time, right? but you also have to be a steward of that as well. 2 legs are generosity and stewardship. Generosity and stewardship. How can I be generous in my giving? How can I be generous in what I do? God has given me so much that I want to let that overflow. I want to pour out into other people's lives. And at the same time, I want to be a steward of what I have. If you are generous, but you're not a good steward, God will not open the windows of heaven over your life. Think about that. If you're generous, you like to give things away, but you're not a good steward, you block God's ability. Why? Why would God not give you? Well, because if you think about it, why would God give you something that you can't manage or handle? It's biblical. Look at Matthew chapter 25, verse 29. To those who use well what they are given, if you need to, just kind of right above that, steward. Those who use well what they are given, even more will be given. They will have a what? Abundance. More than you can handle. But those who do nothing, even what little they have will be taken away. See, you're given abundance. Why are you given abundance? To be generous and give. But you can't get the abundance if you're not what? A good steward. Do you see it? He cannot give you resources because you're not managing what you have. It's important that we do this. On the other hand, if you are a good steward, but you're not generous, you're tight. You call that a tightwad, right? I want you to think about this. When someone is you have the closed fist mentality, right? Because they hold on to it, right? They hold on to it. They don't want to let go. What does this also kind of, if you think about this, what does this represent? There's a little bit of anger, right? There's a little bit of hostility. But when you're generous, this seems more approachable. This seems more, when you shake somebody's hand, you don't go, hey, what's up? Now, sometimes you bump fists, but there's a generous, there's an open hand there. Why would God bless you if you're a good steward, but you're not generous? His purpose is to get the resources to the people who need it. I mean, if you are here, God is here, okay? God is here. You are here, and the people who need the resources are here. God has all the resources, right? He wants to get the resources to these people. Who does He want to use to give those resources? Us. But if you and I are not willing to be the conduit and give the resources that God has, what is God going to do? He's going to find another way. If you and I are not willing to use God's resources and give it to those in need and give it to those who God will find another way. Look at 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 8. And God will generously provide what? All you need. Underline that, circle that. Then you will always have everything you need. Here's the key. Underline this. And plenty left over to share with others. Sometimes we're worried, I don't want to share because what happens if I don't have enough? I think we just sang a song called Waymaker. That God provides, right? That God knows where we are. You and I cannot fear that God is not going to provide. God says He will provide. We have to trust His word. And God will provide generously all you need. Then you will always have everything you need and plenty left over to share with others. As the scriptures say, they share freely and give generously to the poor. Their good deeds will be remembered forever. For God is the one who provides seed for the farmer and then bread to eat. In the same way, He will provide and increase your resources and then produce a great harvest of generosity in you. God wants to use you to be the conduit to give resources. He wants to say, I want my church, I want my people to be blessed, and I want them to be a blessing. But if they're not generous, or if they're not good stewards, I need to find another way. Those who have needs are those who need food or water, missionaries, the message of the gospel, medication. God wants to give those resources. God cares about the innocent. God cares about those who can't care for themselves. God cares about the orphan and the widow. God cares for those who are weak. God says we should care for them too. God cares for the lost. God cares for the brokenhearted. So many times you and I, sometimes we're even in that place. Ever been in that spot where you feel brokenhearted? Where you feel alone? Where you feel like you got no answer? Listen, God has a plan. God wants to not just say, hey, I want you to use other people, and I want you to give to other people. God says, I understand you have needs, and I'm going to meet your needs. I'm going to take care of you, but you need to make sure that you're still being generous. He will give you the resources you need and bless you. But if we're not willing to share with others, here's the big idea here. God is looking for a river, not a reservoir. Come on now. God is looking for a river. He wants the resources to flow downstream. He doesn't want us to just pile them up. What is the point? I mean, it's nice to have some resources piled up, but they do no good because eventually they're all going to burn anyway. Right? I want to do the most I can for the most amount of people I can. You can be a generous giver, but when you are blessed and you don't handle it well, it won't last. It's like nailing a shoe to the floor. Anybody ever felt like that before? You got the shoe nailed. What happens if you nail one shoe to the floor? You end up kind of doing this thing. Right? Anybody felt like that was your life? Like, I'm going somewhere, I'm just not sure where I'm going. I think I'm going to make it. You ever felt like that? I'm a little dizzy. No. The goal is, listen, there's a purpose and a goal in mind. Sometimes we may not always see it. We may not always understand it. But I know that the resources I have, my time, my energy, my money, my talent, it's to invest into others. It's to help others grow. It's to reach people with the gospel. It's to share my faith. It goes all the way back to God speaking to Abraham. Look at Genesis chapter 12, verse 2. God speaking to Abraham, look what he says. I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you and make you famous. And you will be a what? Blessing to others. Notice that God said, I'll bless you so that you're a blessing to others. God just didn't say, hey, I'm going to bless you because you're the best or I love you. I'm going to bless you so that you can bless others. God's idea is to bless. He wants his kids to be beyond blessing. He wants that blessing to be able to be given away. We get to help people. We get to minister to people. We get to be a blessing. Pastor Robert, I'll turn it over to you.
So we're going to begin a new series called Beyond Blessed. It'll be 4 weeks. I'll preach all the weeks. And the title of this message is Living Beyond Blessed. Now, you might think, well, what do you mean by beyond blessed? I mean, if you're blessed, aren't you blessed? How can you be beyond blessed? So I thought of a little natural example, and it relates to where I am in my stage of life. If you have a grandchild, that's blessed. If you have 9 of them, that's beyond blessed. So I'm beyond blessed. So what I mean by beyond blessed is that God so blesses us, I'm not talking about materialism, please hear me, but it's so that we can be a blessing. It's so that we can bless others. And this is actually, Beyond Blessed is the sequel to The Blessed Life. In some ways, it's the prequel. They go hand in hand, and I'll explain that. But let me give you a little history of The Blessed Life. We started the church in 2000. In 2001, James Robinson's ministry came to me and asked me to come on the program and teach on giving. And the reason was, James said, because I teach giving, the way I teach giving, he was talking to me, he said, the way you teach giving is that you teach that we get to give, we don't give to get. Everyone get that? And there's a lot of give to get teaching going on right now. And so he said, you know, I want you to come on and teach on that. And then he said, and if you can write a book, that would be good. And so I said, well, when are you talking about airing these programs? He said, in about 3 to 4 months. Okay. So I actually went to a friend's vacation home and dictated The Blessed Life into a tape recorder in 3 days. And then gave it to a guy in our church who's an editor and ghostwriter that helped put it in, written form for me, who still works with me to this day. He helped me on Beyond Blessed. Very, very gifted writer. And so anyway, we had it out and we self-published it. Now, let me give you a little background. 90% of all books sell less than 5,000 copies. 90%. 95% sell less than 10,000 copies. So only 5% ever sell more than 10,000 copies. So we self-published The Blessed Life and sold 250,000 copies self-published. Then we assigned it to a publisher, and now it's in 30 or 40 something languages. It's around the world. It's used as textbooks in some places. Millions and millions of copies. It's not just a bestseller. It's still a bestseller in America every month. It's still on the best-selling list 17 years later, and many times still the #1 spot. And it's an international bestseller now. Just so you know also, most people know this, but I believe in giving the first to God. I believe the Bible teaches that. We'll talk about that a little bit. And when I laid my hands on the manuscript for The Blessed Life, I felt like the Lord said, will you give this one to me? And so I gave that book to Gateway Church. Gateway Church owns The Blessed Life. Now this is something that's so amazing about this. Debbie and I have never taken a dime from it. This is going to shock you what I'm about to say. And I wondered whether I should say it or not because it is a big number, but I just want to let you know how God's used the book. Gateway Church, it brings in about $500,000 a year. That one book to the church. So it's unbelievable what God's done with the book. And I believe it has helped spark a movement of generosity in the kingdom of God. And many pastors would agree with that. But right after I wrote the book, I started getting a lot of emails and questions, and people would say something like this, Pastor Robert, I'm giving, but I'm still in debt. And for me, I didn't understand that. Because giving is only one part of being blessed. And it's almost like saying, when you talk about grooming, you need to brush your teeth and wash your hair and use deodorant and, all sorts of things for grooming. But it was almost like someone was saying to me, I comb my hair, but I still stink. Well, there's more to it than simply running a comb through your hair, So giving is very important, generosity. But there's a huge second component, and that's what we're going to talk about in Beyond Blessed, and it's stewardship. Now, please hear me. Stewardship is not a bad word. It's not a bad word. Many times we have a bad connotation of it because a church will say, we're going to do a stewardship campaign. It means we're going to raise money for something. Or I'm going to bring my annual stewardship message. It means he's going to preach on money, But stewardship has to do with every area of your life. So let me explain to you about living beyond blessed. Let me tell you point number 1. Point number 1 is it takes 2 legs. It takes 2 legs. Here's what I mean by that. I didn't name The Blessed Life. I didn't name it The Blessed Wallet. I didn't name it The Blessed Checkbook. I named it The Blessed Life. And a life walks on 2 legs. If you're going to get somewhere, you got to be able to move forward by moving one at a time. Even Nick, who was here last Sunday night, you saw him on the table, moving his hips, moving from side to side, just moving right, left, right, left. All right, so it's the same thing with being blessed. The 2 legs are generosity, which I covered in The Blessed Life, and stewardship. Let me say it this way. If you are generous, but you're not a good steward, God will never open the windows of heaven over you. Here's the reason why. Because you won't manage it right. He can never give you a lot of resources because you don't understand stewardship. You're not managing them. You won't manage them. And so it'll get wasted. On the other hand, if you're a good steward, but you're not generous, by the way, we call that tight. Go ahead and nudge. Okay. Then why would God bless you either? Now, please hear me. Because his purpose is to get the resources to the people who need it. See, think about the need, all the people who need food, water, the gospel preached, churches built, missionaries sent, all the need. Over here, all the supply and demand would be God. God owns everything. He owns everything. He owns everything in the world and out of the world, for that matter. He owns Mars. You know, he'll be at Mars when Elon Musk gets there. So he owns everything, okay? So God owns it all. Here's God. Here are all the resources, right? All of them. All of them. God has it all. Here's all the need. What's in between? You are. Because God channels, directs, funnels his resources through his children. So he's trying to get it over there, so he'll bless you. But if it doesn't get over there, please hear me, he's going to move on to someone else. He's going to find someone who will be a river, not a reservoir. Because he's trying to help those people who need help. So he blesses. So we can be generous, but here's what happened with the blessed life. A lot of people caught generosity, but then they did not catch stewardship or the management of their resources well. And so the blessing didn't last very long because when they got blessed more, they didn't handle it well. They didn't manage it. So this is such an important thing. It reminds me of when I was growing up, I can't even remember what it was. I just remembered the picture in my mind. I saw some cartoon character and they nailed one shoe to the floor, you know? So, I mean, if you want to just kind of get it in your mind there, you know. So this guy just did this the whole time. Everyone got it? Because I want to quit doing that. All right. That's what a lot of Christians are like. They're either generous and they just keep going in circles, or they're tight and they just keep going in circles. But you have to have both. You have to be a good steward and you have to be generous. And here's the reason why it takes both legs to be blessed. It goes all the way back to our patriarch in the faith, Abraham. Genesis 12, verse 2. I will make you a great nation. This is God talking to Abraham. I will bless you. Notice the idea of blessing a person was God's idea. God said, I want to bless you and make your name great. And here's the reason why, you shall be a blessing. I will bless you so that you can be a blessing. See, God wants his kids to be beyond blessed. We're so blessed that we get to give away. We get to help people. We get to minister to people. Again, you have to have both. You have to be generous and a good steward. Now, I got 3 kids, and Josh, James, and Elaine. And James, the best way to say it was he was tight growing up. All my kids are good stewards, but let me just give you the analogy. So I told all my children when they were growing up, whatever you put in the bank, I will match. James almost broke me. He put everything in the bank. When he was 12 years old, he started working part-time at a dry cleaner's after school, just a few hours a week, and he said to me, you told me you would match everything I put in the bank. Now, not just gifts from grandparents, but what I earned too, right? Like when I earned chores, when I did chores, you did it. So now I'm working here, you're going to do it. I thought, well, it's just a few hours a week. Well, he started working more in high school. He had thousands of dollars in the bank. And I mean multiple thousands of dollars. Josh and Elaine borrowed from him. I borrowed from him. But I quit because I couldn't afford the interest. So he tight. He's so tight he would squeak when he would walk. You know, he just was tight. And everybody knew he was. I didn't know he was generous though, until a lady wrote me a letter. So when we published The Blessed Life, remember, it was Gateway Church that published it. So you couldn't, this is a Gateway Church, the only place you could get it. And we didn't have but just a few hundred members. And so you had to come to the church to get it. So one day this lady comes to the church. James was 16 years old. He was the janitor. He was our first janitor. So he was cleaning the church building. She comes to the church to buy some books. And she tells the receptionist, she's asking where the bookstore is. She tells the receptionist, I didn't know the Lord. And my husband and I were separated, and we were just a few weeks away from a divorce. And I read The Blessed Life, and I got saved. I gave my life to Christ. And I said to my husband, I will give you anything you want in the divorce. I'll take no money at all if you'll do one thing for him, but you have to do this one thing. I want you to read this book. He read the book and got saved, and they called off the divorce. That's pretty good. Because they understood to give their lives to the Lord, okay? So she's telling the receptionist this. She said, and I want to buy 10 books to give them away to my friends that don't know the Lord. So the receptionist, they talk for a while, and then she tells her where the bookstore is. She goes down to the bookstore. They've already got the 10 books set out. And when she goes to pay for them, the lady at the bookstore said, it's taken care of. I would have never known this, but the lady that got these books wrote me a letter and told me. And she said, what do you mean it's taken care of? She said, well, did you see the young man that was standing behind you that was taking out the trash when you were talking to the receptionist? She said, yeah, I saw him. She said, that was Pastor Robert's son. And he came down and paid for the books for you. I've watched God bless him in supernatural ways. Supernatural ways. Why? Because he manages well what God gives him. And he's very, very generous. And he never tells anyone what he does. He just does it. So it takes two legs to live a blessed life and to live beyond blessed. Here's number 2. Why talk about money? I want to answer this question. Why talk about money? Pastor, I don't think you ought to preach messages on money. And I really don't think you ought to write a book talking about it. Well, have you ever read the Bible? I don't mean that wrong. Have you ever read the Bible? It talks a lot about money. You say, well, I don't know about that. Every time someone worshiped, watch it, they brought an offering. God commanded offerings. God set up tithing. That was not thought up by a preacher, even though you might think it was. A preacher didn't think it up. God did. God put tithing in the scriptures that heaven and earth will pass away, but the word will never pass away. It's pretty amazing. So God did this. As a matter of fact, Jesus talked about it so much, it probably would have upset you too. 16 out of 38 parables talk about money and possessions. So here's a good question. Was Jesus trying to get their money? Okay, before I answer that, am I trying to get your money? I mean, let's just come straight out and answer the question. Am I trying to get your money? Now, I never want to be mean, but sometimes I like to say things straightforward. I'm just going to say it straightforward. I don't need your money. I have never needed your money. And you might think, well, you needed it to build this church. No, I didn't, because God built this church. And you might think, well, yeah, but he used my money. No, he didn't. He used his money. And I would be very careful about calling the money in your account yours, because he'll let you know whose it is pretty quickly. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. Matter of fact, that's the content of the whole book, is whose is it? Who's it belong to? Who's the owner and who's the steward? And God's the owner. So God has it all, and he directs it through those who will be good stewards and who will be generous, because he's trying to get it to a need. He knows what he's trying to do. So I've never apologized for preaching on giving. The reason is I know it's actually a blessing for you to give. I know that. I believe it with all my heart. I wouldn't apologize when I preach to you on marriage. I wouldn't apologize when I preach on prayer. Why? Because I'm helping you. I know in my heart I'm doing this to help you, and I know it will help you. I know it will. So let me just go back to this question. Was Jesus trying to get their money? No, he was trying to get their hearts. That's why he had to talk about money and possessions. And let me read it directly from him, Matthew 6:21. This is Jesus speaking. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. How many times do we get that backward? I've heard pastors even get it backward. They'll say, the Bible says where your heart is, and they're doing it right for the offering. Where your heart is, there your treasure will be also. That is not what it says. It says where your treasure is, there your heart will be. In other words, it's not there now, but it will move there once you put your treasure there. There your heart will be also. This one pastor said to me, I know if I can get the people's hearts in the church, then they'll give. I said, no, actually, if you can get them to give, then their hearts will be there. Another pastor, I travel and speak, in other churches and conferences and things. And so I was in this church one time, the guy said, listen, if you see anything in the service that, that can help us, please let me know. So after the service, we went out to eat, and I said, yeah, I did see something, and I want to kind of put it straightforwardly to you so it'll make an impact on you. And so he said, okay, great. And I said, well, I realize that you don't believe in your heart that giving is a blessing for people. And he said, really? So tell me why. I said, well, when y'all were giving the offering today, you got up and you were talking about it, and you said, it's time to give the offering, and then you said, but this is not for guests, this is just for members. And I said, so that would be the exact same thing to me as next week you get up and say, now we have a bunch of 18-wheelers in the parking lot, and they are full of new clothes from Macy's and Neiman Marcus and Saks and Nordstrom's, and they're brand new, and they're all free. They are free, except, now this is not for any of you guests. This is just for our members. I said, see, when you said that, you let me know that you don't believe giving is a blessing. Because when I give people an opportunity to give, I'm giving them an opportunity to be blessed so that they can be a blessing. So that's why we talk about it. And here's number 3, being a blessing. We've talked a little bit about it, but I want to cover this a little bit more. Being a blessing. Now, God blesses us for 2 reasons. I don't want to leave out the first reason. He blesses us because he loves us. You bless your kids because you love your kids. And God does love you, and he does want you to be blessed. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with wanting to live in a safe neighborhood. Nothing wrong with wanting to have a bigger home, more bedrooms, so the kids don't have to share bedrooms. There's nothing wrong with having more bathrooms. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be in a better school district for your kids. There's nothing wrong with wanting to give them braces if they need braces, or help them with college, or drive a dependable car. There's nothing wrong with any of that. And what happens is the enemy comes along, and it seems like any of those thoughts you have, the enemy says, well, that's just materialism. You're supposed to give up all for Christ. And he just tries to speak condemnation to us all the time. There's nothing wrong with wanting something nice for your family. That's not wrong. So God blesses us because he loves us, but he also blesses us to be a blessing. And so when we talk about that, I want to show you, there was a book a long time ago, very popular, great book. I met the guy who wrote it, and we talked and shared, and he's a great guy. But it was a little book called The Prayer of Jabez. You remember that book? Okay. So it comes from 2 scriptures in the Bible. Great scriptures. I want to show you those scriptures, all right? 1 Chronicles 4, verse 9. Now, Jabez was more honorable. Just want you to notice that the Bible calls him honorable, even more honorable, but honorable than his brothers. And his mother called his name Jabez, saying, because I bore him in pain. Now, the word Jabez in the Hebrew means pain, hurt, or sorrow. Okay, that's what his name meant, was pain. And Jabez called on the God of Israel, or prayed to God, oh, that you would bless me. Notice he's asking God to bless him. And enlarge my territory, or increase my income. That your hand would be with me, that you would keep me from evil. Watch, that I may not cause pain. Can I say that another way? That I could be a blessing to someone. That I wouldn't cause pain, but I'd cause blessing. So God granted him what he requested. Okay, so he prayed to be blessed. So a real simple question. Was that a bad prayer? Was it an evil prayer? And if it was, then why would God grant it? And why would God call the man who prayed it more honorable than his brothers? So I just want you to notice, an honorable man prayed to be blessed, and God granted him. Why? So he could be a blessing. Are y'all following me? So is it wrong to ask God to bless you? Please hear me. I want to shout it from the rooftops. No. It is not wrong to ask God to bless you so you can be a blessing. That is not wrong. Let me give you an analogy. Let's say you live in a community, it's kind of a farming community, and there's a guy in the community that's a mechanic, and he works on people's cars for them, and he will fix single parents' cars for free and widows' cars for free, and he even pays for the parts himself. Good guy. He helps other farmers when they bring in the harvest. He brings his whole family and helps his kids and all. But they just kind of struggle to get by. He just doesn't make that much. And so the dairy farmer gives him milk, and the chicken farmer gives him eggs. And let's just, for this analogy, let's say that you own an apple orchard, and you give them apples. And then one day another family moves in, and you think, I probably should help them too. And so you help them. Then another family, and the community grows. Pretty soon you're helping 5 or 6 families. And then you look at a piece of land that you have that you never planted, and you think, if I clear those stones out and fertilize that soil, I could probably plant some more trees and I could help more people. So you plant the seeds, and then you pray, and you ask God to bless you. Is that wrong? Are y'all following me? It's like the enemy has so messed us up that we should never ask God to be blessed, and that if anyone even preaches on being blessed or even talks about finances, oh, that's that prosperity stuff. That's out of whack, and that guy's materialistic. It is not wrong to be a blessing. It's not wrong to steward your finances in such a way that when you see a need and God leads you, you can meet that need. Are y'all following me? That's what I'm talking about. That's what Beyond Blessed is about. Beyond Blessed is about being a blessing. Not being blessed for selfish reasons, but being a blessing. Being blessed so we can be a blessing. Let me tell you one more story that happened to me. Debbie and I have some land, outside the Metroplex, and we were driving in one time, and we were going to stop and get gas on the way and go to the bathroom and all. And I started thinking about, now this is going to sound bad, but I'll explain it in a moment. I started thinking about this drink that I drink about twice a year that someone introduced me to in high school. It's just going to sound bad. And I started thinking when I stop, I'm going to get that drink. So let me go ahead and tell you what the drink is, all right? It's Dr. Pepper with peanuts in it. How many of you have ever heard of someone putting peanuts in Dr. Pepper? Can I see your hands? Every campus? Okay. How many of you have ever tried it? How many of you like it? How many of you think it's the most disgusting thing you've ever heard of in your, okay, all right. Okay. So anyway, again, it's about twice a year. I don't need to go to classes or anything yet, but I just got thinking about it. The reason it's pertinent to the story is because otherwise I would just got gas on the card, pay the card at the end of the month, go in, use the restroom, come back out. But I had to go to the counter because I had my craving, that I wanted Dr. Pepper and peanuts. So I went to the counter to pay for it, and there was a lady in front of me who was counting coins out. No paper money, just coins. She bought $1.32 worth of gas. So I did what any of you would do. I know you. You'd do the same thing. I went out to the pump. She was about my age, maybe a little younger, and she had her son and daughter-in-law there, and she was buying, that was all the cash they had. And I said, I'd like to fill your car with gas. And then many of you know that I give $100 bills away when the Lord prompts me, and I said, and I want to give you a $100 bill. And the reason I do this is because I used to be very messed up. I was on drugs. God saved my life, and God prompts me every now and then to give someone a $100 bill, but you have to know that this $100 bill is to remind you that God knows where you are, that he loves you, and that he wants to change your life. This mother of these two grown young people said, she gave me a hug and she whispered in my ear, "You'll never know how much they needed this right now." That is living beyond blessed. That's living beyond blessed. But you have to be able to manage your finances so you can bless other people when God tells you to.
That last line in your notes, you may never know when someone needs a blessing. You may never know the blessing that you can be to someone. The only way that you and I, if we're going to live a beyond blessed life, is we have to listen to the Spirit of God, the prompting of God, and we have to be ready. You have to be ready to hear what God prompts you to do. It could be that someone needs your talent and your ability, something they could not do, and you are the one who could fill that role. It could be that someone needs your time, that a few moments of your time are a blessing to someone and it changes the direction of their life. It could be a financial, like he mentioned. The goal is this, are our hearts ready? Is your heart, is my heart ready to be a blessing to someone? Do we have that heart that says, God, I desire to bless. I desire to share the good news, the good gifts that you've given me. I desire to share them with others. And are we being a good steward of what we have? God, you've given me so much. I want to make sure I use it well. Would you bow your heads with me? First question I'd like to ask you is this, have you given your life, given your heart to Christ? It's the most important decision that you and I make. And it could be that maybe it's the first time you've ever prayed it, or maybe this week you realize that you've sinned, you've messed up, you've made some mistakes, and you need to ask God to give you a second or a third chance. But this morning you'd say, Pastor Jason, I need God to forgive me. I need God to give me another chance. I have made a mistake. I've made multiple mistakes. And this morning I want to ask for his forgiveness. Would you raise your hand, just put it right back down? Okay, I see your hand. Yes. Yes. Let me pray right now with you. Just pray along with me, okay? Heavenly Father, I'm sorry. I know that you gave your Son to die on a cross for me. And it is my heart's desire to serve you, to follow you. But I have made some mistakes. I've done some things I'm not proud of. I've sinned. Your word declares that if I will confess my sin to you, and if I believe in my heart that you will save me, that God, you'll give me another chance, that you'll forgive me. God, help me to follow you every day. Help me to live your truth, your words. Help me to obey. Help me, Lord, because I can't do it without you. My next question is this. It's actually a two-part question. Are you being generous? Are you being a good steward? I'd like you just to reflect on that for a moment. Do I have a heart of generosity? Do I have a heart that seeks to be generous with others? Whether I know them or I don't know them. Is my heart one that wants to be generous, that wants to give, that wants to... Do you want to be a blessing? That may be your heart, and you say, I'm all in. Or you might say, well, kinda. you might realize, I haven't had that heart, but I want it. And as you look at your life and as you look at the things that God's given you, are you being a good steward of your time, of your finances, of your relationships, of your resources, of your abilities? Are you being a good steward of the things that God's given you? Could you do a better job? Here's what I'd like you to do. We're going to take these next few moments and we're going to spend some time in prayer and worship. I'd really like if you would say, I need to improve on some areas. I need to fix a few things. If that's you this morning, then as we start to sing, would you come forward? Would you find a spot to pray? Maybe you want to pray about a relationship you've had with someone that you need to speak and share the gospel with them. You need to share your testimony. Maybe it's something that you've got this talent that you haven't used to its full potential, and you want to come this morning and say, God, help me do it. Maybe you've been a little tight with your finances and you say, I need to be a blessing. But this morning as we sing, as we worship, I'd like you to take a moment in prayer and ask God to help you have that right heart that says, not only do I want to be a blessing, but I want to be a good steward. Would you stand with me? And as the worship team leads us in worship, if you feel the need, if you want to take a step of faith and say, I'm going to come forward and pray this morning, would you come and find a spot? You might want to kneel in your chair where you are, but would you say, hey, I need to make a commitment, and as a moment of faith, I'm stepping out and saying, God, I need your help. Join us as we worship this.